Hello, and welcome to episode 84 of the Alternative Health Tools podcast. We are your hosts, Clare, Nicolaou and Lisa Victoria, and today we are talking about the health benefits of intermittent fasting. And today we are joined with a special guest, Clare Gott, who is a resident nutritionist back in Milton Keynes in England. Welcome, Clare. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Would you start just by giving everyone a bit of background?
Yes, I'm the resident nutritionist in a couple of doctor's surgeries here in England. And I see patients every day on a one-to-one basis and help make them well through their nutrition. So I do specialise in intermittent fasting. I do specialise in fasting and a very low-carb diet. That's my passion.
So talking about passion, how did you get into working with these clients and into intermittent fasting? What's your journey been like?
Well, I used to be head of science in an adult education establishment, and I found that every time I taught anything about science, I tended to gravitate towards teaching people about their bodies and food and what happened. So I thought perhaps I'm in the wrong line of work. So I investigated and I thought, where I should be really is helping individuals. So I started some private work, got a bit of training and read a lot and ended up in worming my way into actually doctor's surgery and asking if I could just help patients. So it sort of snowballed from there. Now I'm fairly recognised in Milton Keynes in England, and that's what I do.
What I'm really excited about having you here with us, Clare, is that the job that you do in doctor's surgeries that you do is quite unusual, isn't it? So they are quite forward-thinking, aren't they, to have a resident nutritionist working with those patients?
Yes, absolutely. There aren't any other resident nutritionists working in any other doctor's surgeries. I'd certainly think in the south of England that's the case. It's just because I asked if I could do it. And fortunately, I was paid by the council to do it because there wanted to be some networking between our councils and our medical practices. And they just accepted me. And it was a bit of a risk for them because I'm not giving the NHS guidelines. I'm not just saying what the government says we should do. I was very alternative and I decided that I was going to give the message that I wanted to give. And they took a risk with that. And I have to say the first sort of 3 months was very, very difficult because the doctors were saying eat low fat to lower your cholesterol. I was saying eat high fat to lower your cholesterol. I was saying eat more, don't eat breakfast. I was saying all the things that they don't agree with. So there was a bit of sort of, nudging down the corridor, here she comes. So it was quite difficult at first, but I said, I'm not going to do what you want me to do. I'm going to do what I want to do and give me 3 months. And if you can see improvement in your patients, if you can see improvement in their conditions and sort of less medication being given out, then I'm your woman. So they did.
And it's been a little bit longer than 3 months now, hasn't it?
It's now been 3 years.
3 years.
So fantastic. It's been fantastic. So now I've seen hundreds of patients. And of course, my clinics have grown and grown and my patient list grows and grows. My sort of waiting list grows and grows. And I've now sort of expanded as much as I can, really. And I have private clients on the back of that. So it's working.
Oh, that's fantastic. So, well, let's start talking about intermittent fasting then, because as you know, Lisa and I are both big advocates of intermittent fasting ourselves. So we are really excited to hear about what you feel about it and, how it's worked for your patients. So start telling us about your approach to intermittent fasting.
Okay, well, intermittent fasting it's a fairly new thing. It's a fairly new thing for us to be doing in the modern world. It's been used for years and years. Intermittent fasting just means restricting the time that you eat. So eating in a certain window. I found that I always put patients on a low carb or ketogenic diet, a very low carb diet, because it reduces inflammation and it improves their health generally. So when at all possible, I will do that. But what I was finding was that patients were getting stuck. So they would lose, a couple of stone, or their inflammation would improve, their arthritis would improve. They got a lot of benefits from low carb eating, but they tended to just get in a rut. And I found that in order to kickstart their sort of weight loss again or improve their health even more, they had to, first of all, drop breakfast, which was, oh my goodness, drop breakfast, can't possibly do that. Everybody says you've got to eat breakfast like a king. And I said, well, try it. So they stopped breakfast. Then I went to, well, maybe you could push your lunch to 2:00. So there was this sort of period of fasting. And I put people on these programs and found that within 4-6 weeks, their health benefits were amazing. Their arthritis improved, their weight loss was started again, their blood sugars came down. The benefits I saw from fasting were huge. So then I started investigating it even further and thought, right, well, what if we fast for 24 hours? What if we play around with it? There was all sorts of benefits I could see that I got really, really excited about it. So then I did loads of reading. And of course, because I've got all these patients in clinics, I can experiment. I can say, oh, you're my guinea pig. Would you mind being my guinea pig? And they all say, oh, no, anything. Because by the time they've gone into a low carb diet and I've improved their health, they trust me. So I just say, well, maybe that was not right. But and some people I thought, well, they're never going to do it. And they say, I can't possibly miss breakfast. I can't possibly miss my lunch. But I've got them round to it. So now I put everybody that I can possibly do on some sort of time-restricted eating.
I'd just like to pick up on something you said there, and I love your passion for this topic. And one of the things you said there is people say, oh, I can't possibly miss breakfast. You've got to eat breakfast like a king. And some challenges people might say is, well, actually, of course, you're going to lose weight if you're skipping a meal. But it's bigger than that, isn't it?
Oh, it's much bigger than that. It isn't even about calories. And I say to them, forget your calories. Don't even count your calories. Eat the right things. Eat the low-carb foods, but skip some meals. Because if you skip a meal, what happens is that your body will then it needs some energy. So it's going to take the fat for energy. So you're going to draw on your fat sources, and that's going to be your new source of fuel. So you're bound to lose weight. It's not because you're just not eating. Yes, you could not eat and eat. You could fast and eat a rubbish diet and you would lose weight. But we're talking about improving health. So we have to keep it clean.
And we'll come on to the health benefits in a bit more detail. But just going back to that, how do you deal with those people who have been brought up on the little and often approach? You've got to keep your metabolism fired up, and if you don't, your body will go into starvation mode, and then everything will shut down, and you'll become enormous overnight.
That's difficult. I just say to them, well, first of all, I say, well, look at you. Look at you. You've come to me because you're overweight, you're sick, your knees hurt. So we have to do something. And I always refer back to caveman days. I know a lot of people do this, but it's true. We used to wake up in the morning and there wasn't any food there. The man would go out hunting, kill an animal. The women would cook, prepare the pots. The man would come back at 2:00 in the afternoon with a deer or a lamb. And then we'd have to cook it. So, we were not eating till 4:00 in the afternoon, and then we were feasting, and then we were resting. That's time-restricted eating. That's fasting, and it's just so important. When we eat, we have a rise in blood sugar. The pancreas secretes insulin to take away that sugar. Now, our pancreases were not designed to keep squirting out insulin to take away this sugar. They're not made for that. They're made if we have an enormous feast and we've got some berries and things that we wouldn't normally eat, so we find some fruits, the pancreas dealt with the high blood sugars when we'd eaten that sort of thing. But it wasn't designed to keep every day, first thing in the morning, secreting insulin. And that's why we've become insulin resistant. That's what we call it. We say, we're not designed to squirt out insulin. And you get to middle age and your pancreas says, hey, I've had enough. I've been squirting out insulin to get rid of your sugar and your carbohydrates all your life. And now I've had enough. And then we take a blood test in the doctor's surgery. We see that they're pre-diabetic. We can see, when I say to a patient, well, how do you eat? How do you think you eat? And they say, oh, I eat really healthily. I eat cornflakes for breakfast. I eat beans on toast for lunch. I always eat 5 fruits a day. And they talk about it. And I look on my screen and I say, well, your blood sugars are way higher than that. Your blood sugars are high. That means you're not healthy. So we have to change it.
And that, I think, brings us on really nicely, Claire, too. In the fasting period, we shouldn't really be eating anything at all, should we? Nothing that's going to spike our insulin.
You're quite right. There are different types of fasts. There's clean fasts and there's dirty fasts. If you're having a clean fast, in other words, if you're not eating anything, you're just having water. It's called a water fast. So you're just having water for that period of time you choose. It might be 14 hours. It might be 16 hours. It might be 24 hours. That's a clean fast, so just water only. Some people have black coffee. Some people have black tea. That's also fine, because what you've got to think about is what spikes your insulin. If black coffee doesn't spike your insulin or tea doesn't spike your insulin, that's fine. Some people have fat. So some people might have a teaspoon of butter in their coffee, or that seems to be the trend at the moment, or MCT oil. There's things that you can have that don't spike your insulin. And I would say if you're going through a fast and you're going with water only, which is, of course, the best, and you get to 14 hours and you really wanted to go for 18, I'd say have a black coffee. Have butter in your coffee. It's better than breaking it. Just have something to keep you going so you do get the health benefits of the long fast.
And just picking up on something you said there, which is fantastic, because it's talking about, different lengths of fast. So you mentioned if you can only get to 12, 14 hours, how do our listeners out there who've never experienced fasting, how do they know the different types of fasting that they can do?
Do you know, I always say there's never a failed fast. Fasting just means don't eat. So if you don't eat your breakfast, you fasted. If you go all night and you push your breakfast till 10 o'clock in the morning, you fasted. There isn't such a thing as a failed fast. I always say start easy, miss your breakfast and try and get to 10 o'clock and then have your first meal. Then the next week, give it a go and try and get to lunchtime and then 2 o'clock. And eventually the optimum really is a 24-hour fast, because at 22 hours, good things start to happen.
Wow. Okay. And also, people don't necessarily do it every day, do they? Some people do like alternative day fasting or doing a couple of fasts a week. That's another way to sort of ease your way in, isn't it?
Absolutely. Ease your way in whatever you feel is best. I think when you've got used to missing a few meals, I think the key thing, and I have also found this with fasting, because I introduced fasting, a fair few months ago with my patients, but I found that they also get stuck fasting. So they'll say, I eat 16-8 every day, which means 16 hours without eating and then eating in an 8-hour window. Or they say, I only have one meal a day. But at weekends I have one, maybe two. And I say, never, ever get into a habit. Always keep your body guessing. So the ideal for me to build up to, so just miss a few meals for the first week, maybe do 16 hours, maybe do 18 hours, then maybe 24 a couple of times a week or even once a week. But I think the ideal is what I call 5-1-1. So that's 5 days where you're just playing about. So maybe one day you have breakfast, one day you don't. The next day you have 2 meals. The next day you might go for 24 hours. So in those 5 days, you have some sort of time restricted eating. On the 6th day, you eat a big feast. So not necessarily bad foods. So you try and keep it clean. So you'll still eat low carbohydrates foods, but you'll wake up and you'll have bacon and egg and sausage and mushrooms and you'll have a big fry up. Then maybe lunchtime, cheese and pickles and ham, and the dinner time, a big dinner. So you're absolutely pogged. That actually does your body good because it makes you feel you're not missing out. So you have a nice big feast, but then there are consequences to that, of course. So hopefully the next morning you'll feel rather pogged. And some people do eat off plan on their feast days. I wouldn't advise it at first, but you can do. So if you know you're going to a birthday party and you know you're going to have that cake that mother-in-law's cooked or something like that, I would say the next day you fast for 24 hours. So you wake up in the morning, you miss breakfast, you miss lunch, and you have a small dinner at night. That seems to be the optimum I've found for patients, but never ever get into a habit. Always change it around. So don't feel, today I've got to fast till 3 o'clock. You don't. You can have breakfast. If it doesn't work for you and you're feeling really hungry, listen to your body. Fasting has got so many benefits. but it has to be long term. You've got to be fasting for the rest of your life. So make it doable.
But it's actually very easy, isn't it? I think one of the things that I really like about intermittent fasting is that from a lifestyle point of view, it's so easy because, as you say, when you're mixing it up, like if I know I'm out for dinner tonight, then I might not eat until I go out tonight. In a few days, I might go out for lunch. So maybe I'll have breakfast and then lunch and then I won't have dinner. And it's just so easy. Whereas with the old calorie restricting, counting in calories, counting out calories, it's so, well, it's miserable for a start, isn't it? And it's so restrictive. And then you have that guilt associated with the overeating. And with intermittent fasting, you just don't have any of that, do you, at all?
No, you don't. And I think there's a point here to say that I would always want people to be on a low carb or ketogenic diet. I think it's really healthy. But some people just can't do it. Some people still want to have their toast at the weekend. Some people still want to have bread and potatoes and things that I think are inflammatory, but you can't change everybody, and some people won't do it wholeheartedly. So I always say to those patients, well, if you can't do it and you still have to have carbohydrates because you feel you need them, then you've got to fast. So there are ways of still getting some of the benefits and keeping your weight down by fasting and eating carbohydrates. In fact, there's been quite a lot of research lately on, can you fast and still have those carbohydrates? Can you still have a crappy diet and fast and get the health benefits? And yes, there are ways you can do that. I wouldn't advise it. I don't think it's great, but people do manage. I mean, you've probably heard of the 5-2 diet by Michael Mosley. He would suggest that fasting for 24 hours twice a week, well, restricting calories for twice a week, for 2 days a week, and eating fairly normally the rest of the week is good. Now, it does work. I've experimented with people who will not give up carbohydrates. They fast for 24 hours twice a week, and they keep their weight down. Not a great way to lose weight and not a quick way to lose weight. But if you took that to 3 days and thought, well, I'm going to have my carbohydrates, I'm going to have my toast, I'm going to have all that because I'm not going to give it up, then I would suggest 24 hours, 3 times a week, and you're probably going to get there very, very slowly.
But slowly is better than not at all, isn't it? And that was one of the things when I started fasting is I thought, gosh, how am I going to go without breakfast? And I woke up and I got to about 10 o'clock in the morning and I thought, oh, I'm starting to feel a bit hungry. I'll just push it till 11 and then I'd have my lunch early. And, you're talking about eating, clean foods in your window, ideally. One of the things I found after I'd got into fasting, my body started talking to me and craving different foods. So I could feel that healing going on within. So initially when I got to my window and I opened it, I was just eating whatever I fancied. Yeah. But after a few weeks, once my body had started to heal and get the benefits of fasting, I was then craving different foods. Do you find that with your patients?
Yeah, I do. Well? I do. Because they've done the fasting, so therefore they don't want to eat a load of rubbish. At the beginning, trust me, they will. They'll fast for 24 hours and they'll eat everything under the sun. They'll raid the fridge. We've all done it. But after a while, you think, well, actually, I've not eaten for 24 hours. Why would I nourish my body with crisps and rubbish? So it's your body does change, and your body, you're quite right, does crave different things. I did a bit of an experiment last week. I did a water fast because I think it's great to do a water fast. This might sound a bit extreme, but I did a 3-day water fast. After it, I was amazed that I was craving sauerkraut. Well, I don't even like sauerkraut, but I went to the shops and I bought some. Well, maybe it's my gut bacteria not telling me something. So I went and got some sauerkraut and I thought, well, it's so sour. What can I do with it? So I mashed up some avocado and ate it with avocado. And actually, now I can't get enough of it. I've made sure I've got 2 bottles for the next week. So I just have sauerkraut, avocado, a bit of Parmesan cheese. But I think that's my body telling me something. Maybe my gut biome's not quite working so well. So that's my new mission, to find out all about my gut bacteria.
That's your gut telling you something very strange, Claire.
True.
And sauerkraut is very good for us, isn't it? And
absolutely.
Just talking about a 3-day water fast, one of the things that my mum actually did one a couple of years ago because she had chronic eczema and arthritis, but it was the eczema that drove her to do a 3-day water fast because she just was itching. She'd had lots of antibiotics and steroids from the doctors, and it was driving her mad. She couldn't sleep at night, and my mum's got quite a strong, high pain threshold. So I did a 3-day water fast with her. And at the end of that 3-day water fast, the benefits were incredible. It wasn't easy because it's getting your head around not eating, and it comes to meal time, and it's that habit, isn't it? So I guess off the back of your water fast last week, what benefits and differences did you see? Because you do intermittent fasting already, and obviously, a low carb diet. So what benefits did you see from doing a prolonged fast?
Well, to be fair, I do a prolonged fast once every 6 months, because I think once you're into intermittent fasting and you're eating well, I think a 3-day water fast every 6 months is crucial because it clears out all your dead cells. It resets your body. We have lots of cancer cells floating around, that are not growing, but they're all floating around. We have a lot of junk in our bodies. So I truly believe, and actually when I water fast, I think of that. I think, well, I'm hungry. I really want to eat. And it's just, I'm a bit bored and I'd love to be cooking a meal. But I think about all those cancer cells, and I think about all the rogue cells floating around in my body and think, gosh, I'm flushing these away. So it's really a positive experience. I always feel really energetic after it. I feel very clear-headed. So I will run a clinic and won't be talking any nonsense. I'll be really focused on what I'm doing. So I get more work done on that 3rd day of a fast. And I think that you should just go for it and try it. And I'm sure you'll see the benefits.
Can I just come back to something you said? I think this is a good time to bring this up. You were talking about the bad cells floating around in our bodies. What probably a lot of people don't understand is this concept of, I've heard it called clearing out the cellular trash. So when you're fasting and your body is not involved in processing and digesting foods, it has the opportunity to clear out the cellular trash. And can you explain a little bit about that and why that's so beneficial?
Yeah, it's called autophagy. You've probably heard of it, but it's called autophagy, and it just means that we clear out. Claire, you're quite right. We clear out all that trash that's floating around in our body. Our cells repair. We have stem cell repair. We produce stem cells, and it's so good for aging. You think, all our aging cells, they get repaired. And I'll give you a little example of what happened to somebody I saw about 3 weeks ago. She had a frozen shoulder, and she came to me, and I noticed she couldn't take a coat off. She was a big lady as well. But I said, what's wrong with your shoulder? And she said, I've been to chiropractors, I've been to massages, I've been to physios, I've been everywhere, and I just can't solve it. And I said, would you do an experiment for me? Would you fast for 3 days? And then tell me how your shoulder is. And she said, well, why would that make any difference? I said, I just want to see if it would. And she fasted for 3 days, and her frozen shoulder, or whatever it was with her shoulder, disappeared completely. So that was proof for me. That was enough. That was my experiment. But I've read about it, of course. But it was proof that your body heals itself, and it's a self-healing mechanism. We're amazing. Our bodies are amazing, and we will clear up and we will heal. And I say to anybody that comes to me and they've got cancer, they've just been diagnosed with cancer, fast, because if those cancer cells are flying around your body, you need to get rid of them. And the only way you can get rid of them is by fasting.
And that's a really important point there you've made, is about healing. And quite often, most of us, me included, before I learnt about intermittent fasting, is I'd go to bed at night and that would be my only healing time. That'd be the only time that I wouldn't be consuming any food or drink. But when you give your body space to heal, i.e. you don't eat anything and you go into that fasted state, that's what I call the magic time, where your body can start to actually do those deeper repairs.
That's exactly what happens. Deeper repairs. And there are lots of different ways of fasting. There's fasting with, like we talked about, with black coffee, with black tea, with a bit of fat. There's fasting just with water, but there's also something called dry fasting. And this is a fairly new thing. So there's not been masses of research done on it, but it's quite exciting. I tried a dry fast this week and actually found it really hard. You should never dry fast for more than 24 hours. Dry fasting means you don't consume any water any liquids. You just wake up I had my last drink at 9 o'clock at night, and then I was trying to get to 9 o'clock the next day. By about 4 or 5 o'clock, I felt like I was a prune. I just needed some water. So I broke it because, like I say to my patients, there's no such thing as a failed fast. You did it for a few hours. I will try it again next week because it's an interesting concept. Researchers would say that 24 hours dry fasting is the equivalent to 3 days water fasting. So they've measured the amount of cancer cells in someone's body, and then they've measured them again after 24 hours, and they've done it with a similar patient with a 3-day water fast. And it takes 3 days to rid the body of what the cancer cells that could be rid in 24 hours of dry fasting. So it's a really interesting field, and I'm doing quite a bit of research in that. But it's certainly not going to do you any harm to try it. But I think you do need to listen to your body. You need to say, am I going to collapse? If you are, or you feel enormously hungry or sick, then you do need to break it. But it's a really good fast to try, and it's not so long.
Wow.
That is interesting. I personally, I think I'd struggle with that because I like to drink quite a lot of water, and I think like you would feel like a prune probably after about half an hour and the water. One of the things that I've noticed through intermittent fasting, and I've only really been doing it since February this year. I dabbled with the 5-2 a few years ago, and as you said about weight control, it's brilliant. But it does mean you can get away with quite a lot on your non-fasting days. So not necessarily the point from a health point of view, but since I've been doing a better pattern of intermittent fasting, I've noticed several benefits, but one of the big things that I have really noticed is that this is the first summer that I haven't been constantly taking antihistamines for my hay fever. And I've been taking antihistamines since I was 16. I'm now in my late 40s, mid-40s, should I say. I have had to take really high doses, plus nasal sprays, plus eye drops and all sorts of other things. And this year, I have hardly taken anything for my hay fever. And I do put that down to the benefits of intermittent fasting and reducing inflammation.
It's the inflammation.
And I don't follow a completely keto diet. I have to say I do have some carbs. I'm not a big carb eater, but I don't follow a completely keto diet. So I don't think it's that. Probably helps, but I think for me it's the fasting has shown a really, really powerful impact on my levels of inflammation, and I think that's fascinating.
It is. There's quite a few, and I think you're right. You don't have to follow a completely keto diet. I mean, a healthy diet is fine. If you call grains healthy, then that's fine. I wouldn't call grains healthy, but a fairly low carbohydrate diet, being careful about what you eat is crucial. But you're quite right. You can fast. You can get the benefits of fasting. You can get enormous benefits through just doing a couple of 24-hour fasts. My husband had gout. I don't know how, living with me, because I still think it's an inflammatory disease, but he had gout a few years ago. And I said to him, "You've got gout." He refused to admit that he had gout. And I said, "You need to fast. You need to fast because then it will go." And that's a highly inflammatory disease. So, and he eats not fantastically, but not appallingly by any means. And I said 2 fasts, 24 hours a week. So we started with a 3-day fast, a 3-day water fast, and then he went to 2 days, 2 24-hour slots, once a week. And gout was cured, and they'd put him on tablets. And I said, "Don't throw those tablets away. You don't need those tablets. It's inflammatory. I can heal you." He said, "Oh yeah," rolled his eyes, of course. But another experiment, and he did it. And all the things the doctors say about gout, you need to avoid shellfish, you need to eat this, low purine foods. It's absolute nonsense. Your body is inflamed, and it's showing you it's inflamed. So the best way to get inflammation down is by fasting.
I love how you just kind of summarised that there. And we've talked about many of the benefits of fasting, from not having to take antihistamines to curing gout to lots and lots of, my mum with her eczema, losing weight, getting rid of the dead cells floating around. So there's lots and lots and lots of benefits. I guess just who is it for? Who can fast?
Everybody. There isn't anybody that people say, "Oh, I can't fast because I've got to take medication." Well, normally you can take medication. It says you have to take medication with food. Normally that's nonsense when they say that, because I've spoken to the doctor and said, "Look, I want to put this person on a fasting regime. He's taking blah, 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 blah." And he said, "Oh, it doesn't really matter," because it always says on the backs of the pill packets must be taken with food. But that's if you've got a really sensitive stomach, and most of the medications can be taken just with water, and most of the medications can be taken twice a day, at periods when you are eating, or once a day. So just don't believe everything you read on the back of those pill packets. And anybody can fast. Everybody should fast.
Do you have any caveats to that, say for children or pregnant ladies?
I do. Yeah. When I say everybody, I shouldn't have said that, should I? Pregnant ladies shouldn't fast. Pregnant people shouldn't fast. Children, I never put on a fasting regime. Actually, sometimes if they're really overweight, I say it doesn't really matter to miss your breakfast, or just push it to 10 o'clock. But I would never put a child or a pregnant woman on, or somebody who was very, very underweight, very old and underweight. Then I just say, eat your custard creams, you'll be all right.
Yeah, I guess people with eating disorders, it's something extra to think about, isn't it?
It is. But actually, the jury's out with people with eating disorders. I've got some people with eating disorders, and sometimes they like the structure of fasting, because that's what they're very sort of ordered people, and they like a regime. So what I do is I usually say, well, you can fast, and I would like you to fast, but then I want to know what you're eating in those 2 windows that you are eating, and making sure that they're getting the calories in that they need.
Yeah, so I guess for anyone that's outside, having a fairly normal, healthy diet anyway, before they start, it might be worth them seeing their doctor.
Yeah, absolutely. Always check with your doctor. Always check with your doctor, because, sometimes fasting can cause heart arrhythmia. There's ways of getting around that. I have heart arrhythmia, but I just take more salt. So I take more salt. That keeps my salt levels high, or level, which means that I don't get arrhythmia. So there's things to look out for. So I wouldn't just launch into a 3-day fast without doing a lot of reading, or be under a health coach. Go and see somebody about it, but make sure you see somebody who believes in fasting.
That's a really important point, isn't it? Because if you're talking to the wrong people, they're going to give you the wrong advice. But if you think fasting could be for you, you need to find a health coach that has enough knowledge on intermittent fasting that they can give you proper advice. And
absolutely.
That's really key.
Yeah.
I think that's great advice, Claire. Thank you very much. I think it's always advisable to see your doctor if you're not sure about anything new that you start. And that's probably as good a place as any to wrap up for today. Claire, it's been fantastic to have you on with us. Thank you so much. Anybody that wants to contact Claire directly, please feel free. It's Clare without an I, same way as I spell mine, Clare at academyofhealth.co.uk. Link also in the show notes.
Fantastic. Yeah, once again, thank you, Claire, for joining us today. And if you've got any questions for myself and Clare Nicolaou, you can message in feedback at lifehacksforliving.com. We'd love to hear your thoughts on intermittent fasting. So we're your hosts, Clare Nicolaou and Lisa Victoria, on Alternative Health Tools podcast. If you like what you've heard, please do share with others, and we can be found on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts from. Until next time, take care.